Right, John, you just mentioned there, you were you were the first person to bring the betting ring into national sort of consciousness, really, because people that bet every day in a betting shop wouldn't have seen any pictures, and they probably wouldn't have gone racing. So you really brought it to life, didn't you?
Well, I wouldn't quite say that, but it is one of the great attractions of British racing. You know, the betting ring, the betting jungle, as I call it and other people call it. And it's one of the reasons that you want to go racing. And the colourful characters and the bustle. And, you know, you never get that in America. You go to America and go to the racing and they go and they're shouting, "Come on, number one," and they're going to have their bet. They queue up and go and have their bets on the Pari Mutuel and the Tote. And that's it. Here in racing, you know, the betting ring, the betting jungle, is one of the reasons people go racing. Now, they don't go down there in the betting ring every race, but many punters, you know, one of the places you must go to is the betting jungle. And it's a reason that we must keep bookmakers on the course, because if we become more mechanised and did it by machines, it would be more accurate. I think punters, of course, if I had my way, the prices would be better. It would change the prices. But the appeal of going racing and the atmosphere that brings and the tic-tacs, how we miss the tic-tacs. It really is wonderful, the way from ring to ring and sending the messages and all that, and the bookmakers' language, so much of that has died out. And it's so much more a business. Of course, it was always a business as far as money was concerned, and you had to make money. And bookmakers did go skint. You know, it wasn't that every bookmaker made a profit. You know, when I was a shareholder in a bookmaking firm, I didn't make any money out of it. You know, so I always say I'm the failed bookmaker, failed punter, failed journalist, so there's only telly left. So it was all very sad. But it's the decline in national awareness and interest in horse racing is alarming and steep. And I would compare it, and people will say this is exaggeration and it'll never happen. But look what happened to greyhound racing. Greyhound racing in my lifetime has gone from, the only way you could bet in the old days was horses, greyhounds and the football balls. Right, you could bet in casinos, you became a member and this, that and the other, and a few accounts and everything. But that was the general way the public could bet. Betting was illegal. So apart from street bookmakers, which is illegal, horses, greyhounds and the football balls. Look what's happened to greyhound racing now. And I'm not blaming anybody. And we all know all leisure activities have been hit by the multiplicity of them, by the number of opportunities you have on the internet. That's why any attempts to restrict betting are ridiculous, because you can bet what you like throughout the night, day and night, on poker and on racing, on anything you like on the internet, and you can have as much as you like on. So the whole industry is under threat by what's going on because of the increase in money for the leisure pound, but none more so than greyhound racing. All the tracks in London are closed. I went to most of them, for instance. Tracks, you know, like the Park Royals and Wandsworth, and you know, it is so sad to see what's happening around. Wimbledon went now. White City for the Derby. Derby nights at White City were huge, and you knew that's where Bannister and Coutts and all that, the great runners, had run around at the White City track, and the legendary bookmakers that were there. And it was, you know, it was part of the attraction. Well, the big part of the attraction was the bookmakers. You can imagine if they had no bookmakers, pre-war and post-war, how many people would have gone racing? They were actually gone there because that's one place they could legally bet. So it was, and now what we've got, no greyhound racing in the capital, and it's under threat right around the country. And that's why you have to mention Ben Keith and Star Sports. What they've done for the Greyhound Derby has been saved it. If it hadn't been for Ben Keith and Star Sports, the Greyhound Derby at Towcester, now what would it be? Be a £50,000 race maybe. They had to find a track for it. No, it would be absolutely, the decline would have been terrible. So he's done his best, but it's such an uphill fight because all sports are under pressure, none more so than greyhound racing. And horse racing itself is in similar decline. The closing of tracks, the drop in turnover, 50% or more of betting shop money is not on horse racing now. Extraordinary thing, you never thought of it in the old days. It was horse racing, then it was greyhound racing, and a little bit some football and this, that and the other. Now, football dominates, as it dominates the media, it dominates the television. When they're big games on, they're on either BBC or BBC One or ITV, which was very rare in the old days. In the old days, all they used to be able to watch on television was probably the FA Cup final. They were lucky to get that and monitor internationals. So it's the decline in sporting events opposed to football, but none worse than greyhound racing. So let that be a benchmark for everybody who thinks, oh, racing's all right. Yes, racing's all right if it was only Cheltenham and it was only the Derby and it was Royal Ascot. They'll always be popular. But look at tennis. Wimbledon's hugely popular. I'm lucky to have been once or twice to go to Wimbledon and the centre court at number 1. But imagine if you took a survey around the country. How many people go to Eastbourne and Birmingham and all that? They go up for Wimbledon, they'll queue outside Wimbledon all night to watch it. It's the lure of the big event. And that's what people want. It's like the big fights, it's like the big games of cricket. Test cricket's in decline, apart from the Ashes and the Australians, and I'm hoping that this year the West Indies come over and hope they can get a decent team together. I remember the three Ws for the West Indies, how thrilling they were to watch. Australians are different. Australians are uncouth and you hate them, and it's particular loathing when the Australians whitewashing us in the Test or almost that Test series, or almost. It's terrible. But that's what we've got to watch out for. The decline in our favourite sports, they're not immutable, that they're always going to be there. Not always certain there's going to be Test cricket. You certainly can't always be certain there's going to be continual racing all the time. Courses are so valuable, the land and all that thing. We've seen closures, even talk. Jockey Club, of all people, the Jockey Club, 250 years of history. Whatever you say about them and the arrogance and the aloofness of them, absolutely fine. But they were there to preserve, to conserve and pass on to future generations what we're enjoying so much. And they're not doing that. They're running it as a commodity. It's a business. To the Jockey Club, racing is a business as long as their figures are right. And if that means selling highly expensive acreage, they'll do it, make a profit, and justify their existence. That's not what they're there for. They're there for to keep the very best of British racing, improve it if you can, quite rightly, and not to keep everything, because if you don't change, remember George Wigg, Lord Wigg, who was former Levy Board chairman, Labour Party minister, fixer, pretty ghastly man George Wigg was. But he had a wonderful phrase, and it was absolutely right. In life, if you don't change, you end up like the dinosaur, stuffed. That was George Wigg's philosophy, and he was right. You've got to change. You've got to move with the times. And that's what racing has got to do. Otherwise, you'll end up just like poor old greyhound racing on its knees.